Good morning. Happy Election Day, everybody. My name is Justin Villery with the Committee of 70. We have a whole host of programs going on today on May 16th, primary day here in Pennsylvania. And leading us off are two important people from the PA Youth Vote that we would love to speak to. The youth vote, as we're going to talk about today, is something that is incredibly important. And as we have a municipal primary here, PA Youth Vote's been doing a fantastic job over the last, 5-6 years now. It seems like you all have been around for a while, doing some really, really great work on engaging young people in Philadelphia, high school and college students to go to the polls, but then outside of Election Day to do a lot of work and becoming engaged and active members of our citizenry. So Angie Hinton is let me get your title right, Executive Director, right, of PA Youth Vote.
That's correct.
Kamryn Davis is a recent graduate from Westchester University from yesterday? Is that right? Is that what you said?
Over this weekend, it was on Saturday, actually.
Wonderful. All right. Well, congratulations to you. And you're one of the student leaders of PA Youth Vote, correct? So we're just going to keep this relatively informal. But today's the purpose of these conversations is to just give some viewers introduction to all the different groups that are really, really important in not just this election, but in Pennsylvania politics and government. And so I'd love for both of you to introduce yourselves, anything that you feel is important about today, just some general thoughts, how PA Youth Vote is operating. But Angie, I'll turn it over to you first. Just a brief introduction would be great.
Thank you so much, Justin. That was a great, very warm introduction. So thank you. We love partnering with Committee of 70. So, I like to say we're partners in empowerment. And so thank you for always being there to partner with us. My name is Angie Hinton. I am the Executive Director of PA Youth Vote. I'm also the president of the NAACP in Norristown. And so I get to be kind of day-to-day running the organization. And I have the privilege and the honor of working with students like Kamryn, who keep me inspired during some of these days that have been, pretty heavy over the last few years. So I'll turn it over to Kamryn. She can introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kamryn Davis. I'm a recent graduate of Westchester University. My major was political science and my minors were law, politics, society, as well as Spanish. I also serve as one of the student leaders at PA Youth Vote, as well as the social media director. And a lot of the work that I do with PA Youth Vote has been on the social media end. So trying to engage people through like TikToks and our little fun, energetic posts, but really making sure that students' voices, youth voices are centered in not only just this election, but every election and just in policy making and decisions. I'm glad to be here today.
Well, thank you both for joining us. And so, Kamryn, I'm going to ask you to kind of start us off. You touched on a little bit about what PA Youth Vote does and what you do. But yeah, just can you give us a little bit, give the audience a little bit more background on PA Youth Vote and the work that you all do?
Okay. PA Youth Vote is an organization, it's a nonpartisan organization that really focuses on elevating youth voices and making sure that we collaborate with young people, educators, and just community organizations to raise awareness on issues and connect issues with youth and making them more like civic engagement oriented, getting them activated to just not only vote, but just talk and demand things and hold their elected officials accountable. So PA Youth Vote does a lot of work on just preparing young people to be civic actors.
I like that that adjective, civic actors. That's great. Gives you much more of a active role in our democracy. That's wonderful. Mm-hmm. Angelique, turning to you, we've got the 2022, 2024, those elections get a lot of national attention, right? But 2023, when we have municipal races across the Commonwealth, and then we have judicial races, are arguably just as important, if not more so. And so what have you and then the students with PA Youth Vote been telling your members, your constituents, your students about why this election is so important?
So I agree with you. Municipal elections are what we call local elections, right? And so they really are, to your point, more important, most important as far as I'm concerned, because they directly impact your lived experience on a day-to-day basis. So in Philadelphia, you have mayor, right? You have council, and they make huge decisions that impact people's lives on every single day. So you hear a lot of talk on the news about things like gun violence and public safety, right? But behind the scenes, those people will decide whether or not we're doing community investment and creating programming, all those things that data has proven tamper down all of that, violence that has been happening. And so when you're looking at mayor, they also appoint school board, council has to approve that. So really trying to help people understand that these races at the local level are the ones that they're going to affect your lived experience every single day, right? They're the ones that decide whether or not we invest in community recreational programs. School board decides what type of policies are happening in your schools, what type of curriculum is being introduced to your students, right? And then you have council people who will approve the budget and how we're, again, spending money in our community. So young people, we try to really tie all elections to issues and the relevant impact it has on young people, right? And that's really what kind of makes it stick for them. And so really connecting the dots for them to help them understand how all of these roles at the very local level are what is going to impact them every single day.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's great. Kamryn, to kind of build off that, what is PA Youth Vote doing this election cycle to try to motivate and aid young people in turning out? This is an election cycle in which turnout is going to be a lot lower than normal. And so how are you all trying to boost that number up?
The biggest thing I would say that we've been doing is going into high schools or going to community events where we know there are issues that young people care about, or we're meeting them where they are and we're engaging them about this upcoming election. We're bringing to their awareness, like Ms. Angie has stated, that there are so many different things on their ballot. And we've been doing that through like rallies with the Philadelphia Kids Campaign, or even just listening sessions, which I think are my favorite thing. Like the one we did in partnership with Philly Bolt or YCMB when we talked about gun violence. It's just been a lot of listening sessions or voter registrations or things where we can not only educate them, but again, we center youth voices. So we're listening to them. We're listening about, what do you want to hear from these elected officials or these mayor candidates, like putting their issues to the forefront and making sure that in this election, they understand that their issues like gun violence, mental health, their education, those are forefront issues. And that's how we've been motivating them, connecting those dots through those mediums.
I'm going to linger on that just a sec. Are those the issues that you've been hearing a lot from students and young people? Gun violence, mental health, education. Has that been pretty consistent across all of your listening sessions and activities in schools?
Yes, a lot of the times when you talk to students, those are the issues that they're focused on. Mainly gun violence is the one that they see and they're impacted by on a daily basis. So yeah, that's definitely what we hear. And we try to make a connection like, hey, these people that are on your ballot have the power to change these things. So don't miss out on that opportunity to put that person that's gonna care about these issues in office.
Yeah, interesting.
Can I add to that too? Because I just like to say
Please
to
do.
that, we lead at PA Youth Vote by listening, right? And so the issues that impact students can change depending on where they're living, right? Their community
Right.
are in. So Philadelphia, gun violence, mental health, youth employment, the quality of equitable access to resources in school, right? Those are issues they really care about. I live in Montgomery County, right? And so we're the second wealthiest county in the state. But Norristown, which is where I grew up, is predominantly a Black and Brown community. And there's a huge disparity in resources that they can feel if they drive 5 minutes in any direction. So
Right.
it might be fighting, but not necessarily gun violence. But again, all of this is stemming from, the lived experience that these young people have. And so when you can lead by listening and understand what's impacting them, that's when you can really make a lot of this relevant for them and help them understand why it's important for them to be voting, but then also to understand how to advocate for themselves and to use their voices constructively to hold leaders accountable to being responsive and representative of all communities.
Yeah. Angelique, I'm going to stay with you for the next question. Thinking about, how PA Youth Vote is working to increase turnout, engage young people outside of Election Day. What are some of the main barriers that you all are trying to work through that keep students from participating or trying to keep them out of the process?
So again, I would say the biggest thing is access to education around this, right? Like I'm sure many people are familiar, but many people are not, right? That there's a huge problem in Pennsylvania when it comes to equitable access to quality education and resources in public schools, right? And so a lot of teachers don't have the capacity, and a lot of schools don't have the resources to really teach students how government works, right? Why they should be participating. They're not really getting civics on a consistent basis. And so our co-founder is Tom Quinn. Shout out to Tom Quinn. He's an amazing teacher at Central. Those students in Philadelphia are getting this information. Kamryn is a former student of Tom Quinn. And so I don't doubt that's a lot of reason why she understands all of this. But there are many students, again, who are in schools that are in communities that have been most underserved. And so one, they're not able to have the capacity to provide the education. Two, the lived experiences of those communities has not been that government works for them. And so when you couple the two, it just creates a situation where students are not apathetic, right? But again, their lived experience has shown them that this process, democracy, will never be inclusive or responsive to their needs, and they're not getting the education. And so I think a lot of people need to understand that students are not getting this education, civics education, the way they used to. And so that's a big part of the work we do too, is advocating for policies in school where all students will get civic education. And in schools that can't, afford it or under-resourced, that's what we try to do, is go in and provide that information, the important works, and why you should be a civic actor.
Nice. Well, Kamryn, let's talk about your lived experience then, if you're all right with this. Why did you get involved in PA Youth Vote? Why did you study politics in college? What was your motivation for doing that?
As Angie actually touched on it a little bit. So one of the co-founders, Tom Quinn, was actually my social science teacher my senior year of high school. And I was a person that was passionate about many things, but I never realized that, one of them was Black Lives Matter movement, but I never realized how much that's tied together with the power of voting until he brought that civic education into our classroom, registered me to vote, and then in turn it helped me connect those issues that I care about with my power to vote. So I did the same for other students. And what I started realizing is there's this common misconception that we as young people don't care about what's going on. We don't care about politics. I mean, we may be dissuaded because a lot of it is partisan and all, but we care about these issues. As Ms. Angie mentioned, it's in our backyards, a lot of the things that are taking places, but we just feel so hopeless when it comes to this system because, one, we're not educated about how it can work for us, and two, we've seen us get disregarded by these elected officials and things. And that's mainly what I hear from my classmates or students. So I really got into political science because I wanted to further my civic education and be able to give that back to the Philadelphia community, but just also these other communities like Norristown and everything who have been impacted by this lack of education. And that's informed my work because, again, as a student, I know that I'm passionate about things, but I want to, and I know that I've been privileged to have a teacher who cared about teaching me about the power of my vote. And I want to be able to do that for other students as well.
That's fantastic. Looks like Angelique is frozen. Hopefully we get her back in a second. But Oh, I think we do have her back. That was perfect timing.
Back, I'm back. Tip to
Hey,
everybody out here watching, sometimes if you freeze, turn your camera off and then turn it back on.
there you go. Perfect. Um, wonderful. To both of you, this is a jump ball. How do you feel like this election cycle has gone? I know you, PA Youth Vote is a grantee and a partner with the LenFest Every Voice, Every Vote initiative from the LenFest Institute. And so you all have done a fair amount of activities around that. How do you feel like the campaign, the election cycle has gone so far? Do you feel like candidates are engaging with youth issues? What are some things that the candidates who win today should focus on in the November campaign, and then as their new terms start in the new year, what should they take away from this campaign?
Kamryn, do you want to say something first and then I'll follow up, or how do you want to?
You can start first and then I'll follow up with you.
Okay, so when looking at candidates, I think it's been amazing, the collaborative effort that has been happening, especially in Philadelphia, right, with the LenFest, and that has been great. I always say collaboration is going to save this nation. So there's been this huge collaborative effort to make sure that we're reaching every community, right, and meeting every community where they are. And so that is huge, and that's what needs to continue to happen as we move forward. With regards to candidates, I'll be honest, I think we still have a lot of work to do when it comes to having candidates understand the importance of making space and really truly listening to every constituent and every community. And so, as Kamryn mentioned a little bit ago, we did a Philly listening session. That was a huge collaborative effort, and we were very intentional about getting students who were specifically from those neighborhood schools, right? And communities that are, most impacted by trauma, and being under-resourced and underserved. And so we created a session. These young people really gave up a lot of their time, right? And they learned theory of change. They did a survey to understand what issues really youth care about right now. So they gave up Fridays, Saturdays, even some of their spring break to prepare. And we had candidates in one email respond on behalf of 5 candidates to say that they didn't have the time, they were double booked and weren't going to be able to attend. Now, that was very frustrating, but it was also a good learning experience for our students, because then what we did was, we held them accountable, right? And so we let people know we are planning to continue. We've prepared. Some of the mayoral candidates are just too busy. They're not going to be able to make it. And ultimately, a lot of them did respond and show up, right? And so I think, again, what we really need to understand is, I worked in politics. I worked at the state level in the Senate. And one of the first things that elected officials do is they quickly understand which communities are voting, right? Which demographics are voting. And that is sadly a lot of times how they prioritize their time and their resources, right? And so, there's this cycle. And so what we need to really do is continue to let elected leaders know that young people, right, are paying attention. That's a lot of the work that we're trying to do, but that we will also hold them accountable if they don't start being more responsive to issues that young people really care about. I think that needs to be something that's happening across the board, right? All communities need to really start understanding that voting is a huge part, right, of getting responsive leadership, but then following up and holding leaders accountable once they're in office is equally as important to actually pushing them to be responsive and to, keep their promises, right? And to be representative of all of the constituents that they serve. And so there's a lot of work still to do. I think that as we continue to see more and more communities get this education, because I not only do it with youth, I also do it in Norristown, which is also a very underserved, as I mentioned before, community, helping adults there understand how all this is connected. But the more people get access to this education that we're trying to provide and connecting the dots for people, the more you'll see people turn out and hold leaders accountable. And then that's when you'll see responsive and representative leadership, and getting back to a place of public servants instead of politicians.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I love
Kamryn, do
that.
you have anything to add? Yeah, go ahead.
I love that point that Ms. Angie just said in the last one, public servants opposed to politicians. I think that what we really need to work on recentering and refocusing, because as she mentioned, a lot of the elected officials or mayoral candidates or candidates in general did do what they could do, I guess, or what they thought was enough. And we're doing on our end enough to try to push young people to come back and understand that they are what needs to be the center of these politics. But a lot of the elected officials and mayoral candidates and candidates in general don't think about them. They don't consider us. They don't think about the importance of our vote. And we're trying to understand our power, that they work for us. They work for us. And in order for them to start engaging more, we have to hold them accountable, because for far too long, they have gotten away with disregarding our voices, disregarding our issues, and the things that we are passionate about and care about. So I believe that there's still a lot of work left to be done for them to engage with young people more. But I think that on our end, we're going to keep doing more to get young people engaged with civics. Because once we do that, then we're going to be an undeniable force that no one thinks that they can come into office without talking to us first. Because we are the change makers. We are the actors, the civic actors, and the fate of democracy really lies on us getting out to vote and understanding the empowerment or the power behind our voices. So I believe they can do more with young people also just by listening to us. The power of these listening sessions or these panels and these discussions is them to just stop talking and stop trying to politic to us. I know that sounds right, but stop politicking to us. Like, you don't understand what we want to see changed unless you listen to what we want to see changed. So the importance of this election cycle was we were recentering youth voices, and it was no longer this is what I want to do for young people. It's what young people want you to do for us.
I like that. I like that. We've got just a few minutes left. Is there anything else that we haven't touched on yet that you want to make sure that people know about with PA Youth Vote? Anything else that you all have coming up, or things? PAYouthVote.org is your all's website. Anything else, Angie?
Again, I just always like to close out with, again, reminding people that young people are not getting the education, the civics education that they used to. And so really, if we can make sure that we understand that, and that we're trying to support organizations that are doing work to make sure young people are getting access to this information, is hugely important, because it's not available in schools. But if we really want to strengthen our democracy, right, we have to make sure that we're all doing our part to ensure that as many people as possible, right, are informed and engaged and are participating. Right? Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice and everywhere. And so if we are not making sure that more people are participating, right, then we're going to end up in a place where a lot of people are going to start to feel marginalized and disenfranchised. And so let's all work together to expand the electorate here and make sure that young people in particular, you just heard Kamryn, she's amazing. She is a product of someone who has gotten this information, and look at her now, right? I could not be more proud of her. And so, and then the other thing is invite youth in to all spaces, but not just to listen, have them listen to you. Invite them in and listen to them, because they have amazing things to say. They're brilliant and they're action oriented. So invite them to the table and let them be a part of the policymaking decisions in every space.
Wonderful. Kamryn, anything else on your end as well?
I think Ms. Angie wrapped it up beautifully.
Wonderful. Well, in about 5 minutes, Studio C70 is going to continue with an interview. Ashley Session on our team is going to be interviewing Debbie Gross with Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts. We've got a bunch of judicial races on the ballot today. So for those of you tuning in here, stay live with us. We'll be right back in about 5 minutes. But thank you very much, Angelique. Thank you very much, Kamryn, for all the work that you do, for joining us on Election Day. And we look forward to continuing our work together.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.